In this short clip, we're going to be showing you how to remove extreme damage, such as where we have an entire piece of timber missing. We fill it, we get it absolutely flat, and then from there we touch out the damage so it can't be seen. If you can see the damage, we need to do more to it. The processes that we'll be using will show you the colours that we use and how to add different layers and textures to the finish in order to make it as invisible as possible. Here you see George start off on top of the filler. The colour that he's mixing are very traditional colours. I'll talk about those a little later on. He mixes them on a blank background so he can see the colour he's putting on, and he's going with the grain. It's very important to go with the grain. You can see also that the colour he's applying at first glance looks wrong. It looks completely wrong to the finished article. But this is just the base layer for the colour. Once you have the base colour right, you can then add a lot of colours over the top of it, adding the texture and the finishes to the timber. So eventually, what looks at the moment like a completely wrong colour initially will be lost and camouflaged. There's a larger section of this on our website, which is twfp.co.uk. There's a door there which we had to repair at Birmingham University, where something like a foot long section was missing completely. Other timbers that we've worked on, or other bad repairs we've worked on, there was a rosewood door which had a scaffold pole smashed all the way through it. Again, we use exactly the same technique as you see here. You fill it, you get it flat, very important, and then you start to build up your colours. You'll see the brush that George is using is a very fine artist brush. There are many different types, from quills to squirrel hairbrushes. It's a matter of choice in the type of grain that you're touching out. There are different types of timbers that we work on, some easier than others. The door that we're working on here is oak, and you can see from the surrounding areas, oak has got a very bold grain. Other timbers, cherry for example, Swiss pear, very, very tight grain. A different technique is used on those. But in this case, oak, ash, pines, very bold grain, gives us something to be working with. The other thing to bear in mind is that timbers will season. They'll change colour over time due to natural aging, due to ultraviolet light, whereas our touching out doesn't. So when we do what we're doing here, we are fixing the colour at a particular time. If the door then changes colour, our touching out doesn't, and sometimes that can be seen afterwards. So before you do any touching out, make sure that you know the door has seasoned sufficiently. This is a large repair. You'll see it in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen there. There's a circular hole which would be left from something like a pellet which have been filled. On a repair like that, our motto is less is more, whereas what George is doing to the top picture is to be putting a lot of grain in. We'd work just on that smaller area. The larger the area you make it, the more you've got to lose. Again, going back to George, adding more texture, more grain over the top. Background colour now is beginning to blend. You can still see it grinning through slightly, but George still has a fairly long way to go on this yet. Adding texture as well is very important. If you have a very flat grain door, you need to make sure that your touching out is flat. If you have a very open grain, such as oak, such as ash, you need to get that texture into the door as well, so that as you open it and close the door, if there's a light above it, our area of repair doesn't show.